Hey there and welcome back to another What If review, and today we'll be talking about the latest episode to drop, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? And coming off the glory that was What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord, I wasn't sure if Marvel would be able to replicate that episode's success. And they didn't really, but they produced something that was almost as good. I feel like the tone of the episodes are so different that you can't really compare them, but as a standalone, this episode was still very good, just in a different way than the previous ones. The Captain Carter episode was very cheesy and goofy. The T'Challa in Space episode was a walking meme fused into a space noir film. And then this one was almost like a psychological thriller. And whilst it's clearly the odd one out in terms of overall tone, I think it really helps it stand apart from the others. And I actually thought the twist towards the end of the episode was pretty well executed and made a lot of sense. And I think they did a good job of both hiding the twist, whilst also giving it adequate foreshadowing throughout the various assassinations. Although, I will admit, I was in denial. My girlfriend told me the murderer's totally Ant-Man, and I was all, nah, surely not. And once it was revealed in the Black Widow scene, well, I felt a bit dumb. Anyway, back to the episode, the key point of divergence for the storyline actually occurs before Iron Man 1, despite the episode picking up during the events of Iron Man 2, Thor, and the Incredible Hulk. And this divergence point, of course, is the death of Hope Van Dyne a few years prior, which causes Hank Pym's mental state to deteriorate to the point that he adopts the identity of Yellowjacket and goes on a serial killer rampage, wiping out the core members of the OG MCU Avengers, with the exception of Nick Fury and Captain America, and just causing mayhem in general. Marvel Comics famously seems to hate the character of Hank Pym, with him frequently getting hit with the crazy bat, getting killed off, and thrown into situations that make him look like the worst guy ever, like hitting his wife. So, I don't know, I think it was kind of nice for the MCU to actually acknowledge that history in this episode, whilst also keeping wholesome old man Hank in the main continuity. I just hope this kind of stuff doesn't creep into the next Ant-Man and the Wasp film. And then we get the next big point of divergence, the death of the majority of the Avengers, starting with Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. And I thought this scene was really well done. Obviously, going into the scene, you know Tony's going to get killed somehow, but the way in which it was done was so unexpected and sudden. Honestly, I was kind of expecting him to get sniped out or blown up or something. But they took that original scene and they just twisted it slightly. And by doing that, they created a whole new outcome of him dying after getting injected with something that should have helped him. And considering there wasn't really much evidence for who the murderer may have been at this point, I feel like it was a really good way to set up the main plot. Although, once again, at this point my girlfriend had called it, and I, like an idiot, said, nah, can't be. Surely not. More fool me, I guess. And then of course, this sends Black Widow out on a mission to clear both her name and also prevent further assassinations of other potential Avengers, whilst Nick Fury personally visits Mjolnir's impact site in order to further investigate. And this is where we catch up with the events of Thor 1, where Thor attempts to retrieve his hammer with Hawkeye watching on ready to take the shot at him, because he's currently depowered at Odin's behest. And then of course, the arrow fires accidentally and kills him, changing the timeline even further. And side note, if we're going off the plot of Thor 1, when Odin eventually wakes up, he's going to be pretty bummed out. His beloved son and heir is dead because he banished him to Earth to teach him humility, and his adopted son's committed genocide against the people of Jotunheim and has invaded and subjugated Earth. And he'd also likely be dead if Captain Marvel has anything to say about it. Father of the Year, especially if you think about how he's raised his daughter on top of that. We then move on to find that Hawkeye's also been murdered whilst he was locked in a cell, seemingly with nobody around. And yeah, this is probably where I should have realised it was Pym, because there was essentially no other way for him to get assassinated that makes sense. But yeah, my denial was strong. Also, this scene, whilst it had its funny moments, was also a bit of a bummer. Why'd they have to remind me that Hawkeye has a wife and kids? Big old bummer right there, especially after his Infinity War / Endgame arc. I'm still scarred by all of that. And also, I guess I'll mention it here because it's just too glorious to skip over. Phil Coulson's character in this episode is truly the MVP. First off, discussing how Thor has amazing hair, then sniffing his rotting corpse and telling Fury it smells like lavender, delivering a custom-made coffee to Fury in the desert just before the Asgardian invasion force arrives, and even his epic password that reveals what a die-hard Captain America fan he was. It's kind of sad that they killed him off from the MCU and put him in a TV show that they never reference or talk about at all. I would have loved to see him following Steve Rogers around with the big puppy dog eyes begging for an autograph or a selfie, with Steve getting steadily more and more flustered, or wanting a group photo with Cap and Bucky to complete the set. I just really miss the character. He had such a good role that nobody's really been able to fill since, and his annoyed banter with Tony Stark was truly magnificent. And then we move on to Virginia, where Black Widow makes her way to the university where Betty Ross, the daughter of General Ross, is working with the hope of discovering how Tony Stark was murdered. And this scene felt weirdly out of place. I feel like the Incredible Hulk movie is in this weird moment of time where it almost doesn't really fit in with the other MCU films. Really, the only link back to it's General Ross appearing in Civil War and beyond, and soon Abomination coming back for the She-Hulk series. I mean, even Hulk himself was recast for his appearance in the Avengers. So actually seeing this whole storyline acknowledged, especially his romantic entanglement with Betty Ross, was almost a fever dream. I mean, she literally never gets mentioned again, even in passing. It's just so weird. And on top of that, I did not rate her voice acting performance very highly here. It definitely soured me on the character quite a lot. But, using her character, we learn that Tony Stark's death was not due to poisoning, but rather a tiny projectile being fired from the syringe. And yet still, I did not clue into it. Nice! And then Black Widow and Hulk meet, and she attempts to get them away before they're targeted after a warning from Nick Fury the assassins targeting the Avengers. We move on to the Asgardian invasion of Earth, which has been made possible by Thor's death, allowing Loki to stir up anti-Midgard sentiment and bring the army to seek revenge for his brother's death, even though he totally wanted him to die. And it's kind of weird to see Loki's plans actually succeed. And I'm guessing in this timeline, he'll also be able to use the Bifrost to nuke Jotunheim, and then Odin's just gonna have to deal with it, because all his other kids are either dead or locked up for mass murder. We then have a pretty epic standoff between Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Loki and the Asgardians, and Bruce Banner, who's transforming into Hulk, and the US Army forces led by General Ross. I really liked how they sort of bunched up the action between these two scenes and intercut it quite perfectly. It really ramped up suspense and got me curious as to how all of this was going to unfold. And then the action kicked off, and it was really well done. I feel like they really encapsulated just how intense and dangerous Hulk is when he loses control. And it very much reminds me of that huge fight between Hulkbuster Iron Man and Hulk in Avengers Age of Ultron. Just straight up carnage. And then Loki's also doing his thing with a magic ice cube, and you know that's less cool, but I'm sure he tried his best. And then this epic Hulk moment is followed by one of the most brutal MCU deaths in history, with Hulk swelling up and exploding into green goo. And he died not long after saying, he can't die. Probably should have touched wood on that one, mate. And so, another Avenger bites the dust. And even in an alternate universe, it seems like him and Betty Ross are just not destined to be together. And honestly, I didn't see this coming at all, and it didn't seem like something Pym would be able to do at the time, so it definitely threw me off the scent a lot more than I already was. We then move back to Nick Fury, who somehow managed to talk Loki down from wiping out the planet in revenge for Thor's death, with a deal being struck that once Fury finds out who the assassin is, he'll hand them over for Asgardian justice, so they'll probably be executed. It seems like only royals get to go to prison in Asgard. Of course, the one little wrinkle with this plan is that Fury only has a single night to find the killer and apprehend them. And this is where we get our long-awaited reveal of Ant-Man / Yellowjacket having gone full serial killer as he attacks Black Widow just as she discovers that Hope Van Dyne's login's been used to access the S.H.I.E.L.D. database, despite the fact that she was killed 2 years prior to the events of the show. And yeah, this is where I had to give myself a good old-fashioned facepalm and say, yep, I was wrong. And man, did I feel stupid after that one. Anyway, Black Widow gets destroyed and bites the dust, but she still manages to leave Fury a voicemail revealing just what he needs to know, saying that it's all about Hope. But come on, at this point surely it was clear who the murderer was. Just say, the killer is Hank Pym. It's the same length. Come on now. And just as Fury's about to resort to bringing in Captain Marvel to save the day, he figures out the riddle and goes and strikes an unknown deal with Loki before jetting off to San Francisco for the big confrontation. And then here we get our first glimpse of the true Yellowjacket. Not the lame version from the first Ant-Man movie. Pure, unadulterated, crazy Hank, complete with hobo beard and overgrown eyebrows. He reveals that he went off his rocker when Hope died, and that he's been murdering the Avengers in increasingly creative ways. Shout out to whoever thought of expanding Hulk's heart to kill him when it explodes. That was really creative. Although I'm not sure why he turned to goo though. Did it pump Pym particles through his blood and expand him all at once? God, it's so unnecessarily brutal, and I loved it. Anyway, Fury spends most of the confrontation bad-mouthing Hank, Hope and Janet, and just relentlessly mocking him, revealing quite quickly it is in fact Loki behind the wheel, before absolutely dominating Pym in embarrassing fashion. I'm honestly surprised he couldn't put up a better fight than that, but whatever. Needed to end it somewhere. And then of course, Loki betrays them and takes over the planet in a single day, prompting Fury to call in Captain Marvel and Thor out Captain America. So Earth basically only has 2 heroes now, and more likely, just one when she goes back into space. I mean, it's likely now that Cap is totally going to get iced by Winter Soldier and Earth's going to be totally screwed when Hydra takes control. Still, I would watch a Captain America / Captain Marvel team-up film. Or just a follow-up episode to this. Damn. Now I'm sad I'm not going to get it. And that brings me to the end of the review. And this episode was very good. I don't think it's better than T'Challa in Space in terms of characterization, but I think of the 3 episodes, This one has the coolest and most intriguing plot and the most exciting events. But as always, that's just my opinion, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Like it? Hate it? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.